Welcome back to the deep dive. If you're tuning in, you're probably looking for, well, more than just surface-level answers. Today, we're going really deep.
We are. We're tackling perhaps the biggest mystery there is. Who are we, fundamentally?
Yeah, beyond the job titles, the roles, the personality quirks, we're aiming to understand the very structure of identity.
It's a huge topic, but incredibly relevant.
And for this entire deep dive, our conversations can be grounded in the ideas presented in The Foundations of Angel Wing, Volume #1 Technical Research Book. Our mission, really, is to unpack this crucial difference. The book outlines the difference between the self that we sort of learn, the one that's built up over time, and the self that's, well, foundational.
The constructed self versus the authentic self. That's the core distinction we're exploring.
Exactly. But before we jump right in, it's really important we give credit where it's due.
Absolutely. We need to extend a huge thank you to Dr. Chaitanya Kripalu, who is the founder and CEO of the Angel Wing, LLC.
And also to Dr. Elizabeth Berman. She's a key member of Angel Wing's mastermind group and a dedicated presenter of this material.
And we can't forget Sachin Karnik, the researcher who did all the essential background work for this foundational volume. Their collective work makes this whole discussion possible.
It really does. And their material gives us this incredible framework for seeing that maybe our deepest longing isn't really for success or even happiness in the usual sense, but for authenticity.
And what I find so compelling right from the start is the book's emphasis on how we find that. It argues the search isn't about achieving authenticity like getting a promotion.
Yeah.
It's about uncovering a reality that's already here.
A reality to be uncovered, not a goal to be earned. That shifts things immediately.
It really does. You don't build the true self, you kind of realize it or uncover it.
Okay, so let's start with the first piece, this constructed self. The book hits you with this definition right away, and it's quite something. That which you call I is a story told by memory, sustained by thought, and believed by habit.
Wow, yeah, that phrase just cuts right to the chase, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It defines the technical concept perfectly. The constructed self isn't you in a fundamental sense. It's a psychological construct.
It's like something built.
Exactly. An elaborate structure built from, well, everything external, really. Conditioning from parents, society, school, our social interactions, and crucially, memory.
And it starts young, right? The book mentions differentiation. What does that mean technically?
Differentiation is that fundamental psychological process, usually in early childhood, where awareness starts to draw a line. It's the basic recognition of I am here as distinct from the world out there.
Okay, so establishing a boundary, that sounds necessary.
Oh, it's absolutely necessary for navigating the world. You need that subject-object distinction to function. But the book points out that this is also where the first seed of illusion gets planted. Because we start to mistake the boundary and the conditions associated with it, our name, our body, our early experiences for the self. We identify with the characteristics of the separated me, rather than the underlying awareness doing the separating and observing.
Right, so we get this sense of me, and then we immediately start trying to make that me fit in to survive socially.
Precisely. That's the mechanism, adaptation. We learn patterns, behaviors, which ones get approval, which ones lead to belonging, which ones minimize rejection or pain.
Makes sense. We learn the rules of the game.
We do. And those learned patterns over time start to solidify. They become what the book calls false identifications. You stop acting like a good student, you become the good student, you become the responsible employee, a caring partner.
And the danger is when those roles become the whole story.
That's exactly it. The danger isn't the role itself, but the total identification with it. The person ends up being merely a reflection of external expectations, constantly adjusting the mask.
But hang on a second. If differentiation and adaptation are biologically and psychologically necessary for survival, isn't trying to somehow dismantle this constructed self? Well, risky. Don't we need that coherent story to function in society?
That's a really critical question, and the material is clear on this. It's not about dissolving your ability to function or erasing your personality. It's about dissolving the identification.
Okay, the belief that the role is you.
Yes. The problem isn't having a story. It's believing the story is the sum total of who you are. And that story absolutely relies on memory to keep it going.
Memory as the glue of identity.
Yeah.
But the book suggests this glue is maybe not super reliable.
Not reliable in the sense of being a perfect recording, no. It emphasizes that memory isn't like a stable archive file you pull up. It's a fluid narrative.
Fluid out.
Every time you recall something, you're essentially reconstructing the memory. And that reconstruction is subtly influenced by your current mood, your beliefs, what
Yeah.
you want to be true now.
So it's not objective recall.
Not at all. The book describes it as an evolving fiction with the purpose of maintaining coherence. Your mind is constantly tweaking the past to make your current self-image feel consistent and justified. It needs the story to hang together.
And you can see how modern culture just pours fuel on this fire.
Oh, absolutely. Especially today, identity gets so tied up with external markers. Productivity, social media validation, status, achievements.
It reinforces the construct.
Hugely. The constructed self becomes this powerful mental schema that's a technical term for a cognitive framework or filter. We stop just experiencing life directly.
Instead, we filter it.
We filter everything through this narrative lens. What does the situation say about me? Did I perform well? Does this make me look good or bad? It's a constant internal monologue of self-assessment and comparison.
Spending all your energy maintaining and defending that filter.
Yeah.
I can see how the book calls it the prison of the constructed self.
It really is. Because it's built on interpretations, not on direct experience of reality. And because those interpretations are tied to external things that are constantly changing opinions, successes, failures, your sense of self-worth is always on shaky ground. Stability is impossible when your identity is based on an unstable story.
Okay, so that's the constructed self, the story, the filter, the prison. But here's the hopeful part, the counterpoint. What then is the authentic self? The book is this beautiful, simple line. That which observes all change is itself unchanging.
And that is the absolute core of the technical contrast. The authentic self isn't another, perhaps better, version of the ego or a new role to adopt. It's fundamentally different. It's a realization.
Realization of what?
Of oneself as the underlying consciousness, the pure, unconditioned awareness that exists behind or perhaps prior to all thoughts, feelings, sensations, experiences. It's described as self-evident.
Meaning it doesn't need proof.
Exactly. It doesn't require external validation or definition. It just is. And the journey isn't about building something new. The book frames it as a journey of return, coming back to what you've always been, beneath the layers of construction.
So if you're deeply identified with that constructed self living in that prison, how does this shift even begin? Where does the crack appear?
It often starts subtly, with a kind of psychological tension. The book suggests authenticity begins to emerge when your self-awareness starts to become stronger than your self-image.
Awareness versus image.
Right. There's this growing dissonance, maybe a feeling of restlessness, deep dissatisfaction, or a sense that something is fundamentally off, even if life looks good on the surface.
And we usually blame external things.
Almost always.
Yeah.
The ego, the constructed self, immediately interprets that dissonance as needing an external fix. I need a new job, a new relationship, a different city. But the book argues the root of the problem isn't the circumstance, it's the perception. It's the identification with the story.
So the key isn't changing the external, but changing the internal perspective. And the mechanism for that is discovering this. Witness consciousness.
That's the central concept, yes. The witness consciousness. It's that aspect of you that is perfectly still, unchanging, simply observing all the mental and emotional traffic, the thoughts, the moods, the sensations without getting swept away by them.
Like the screen the movie plays on.
That's a common analogy and a good one. The screen isn't affected by whether the movie is a comedy or a tragedy. The witness is like that screen for your inner experience. Recognizing this, even briefly, initiates the crucial shift the book calls disidentification.
Disidentification, that sounds important. It's about separating from the content of experience.
Precisely. It's shifting your sense of I from the content, the thoughts, the feelings, the roles, to the context, the awareness in which all that content arises and passes.
Could you give an example?
The classic one the book implies is the shift from saying, I am angry, where your identity is completely fused with the emotion, to recognizing, anger is arising in me.
Ah, okay. Big difference.
Huge. The first statement identifies I as the anger. It's fixed content. The second statement implies an I, the awareness that is observing the anger as a temporary event, a transient phenomenon happening within the larger space of awareness.
The observer is separate from the observed.
Yes. That separation, that disidentification, is the doorway. It's recognizing you are not the fleeting weather patterns of thought and emotion, but the vast, clear sky in which they occur.
I like the sky, not the storm.
Exactly. And it's why the book points out the limits of language here. The authentic self, this awareness, can't truly be defined by qualities or labels good, bad, happy, sad, smart, dumb, even male, female.
Why not?
Because all those words, all those concepts belong to the world of differentiation and duality. They belong to the constructed self's way of organizing reality. The authentic self is prior to those distinctions. It's experienced directly, not captured in description.
Okay, so this is profound stuff, but what does it mean for, Tuesday afternoon? Does authentic living mean just blurting out every thought or feeling, acting on every impulse? That sounds potentially chaotic.
That's a really important clarification, and no, that's not it at all. The book is careful to distinguish authenticity from simple impulsivity or unfiltered expression, which can often just be the constructed self reacting automatically.
So it's not about more expression, necessarily.
It's about the source of the action. Authentic living means action that flows from clear awareness, from conscious choice, rather than from ingrained conditioning or emotional reactivity. It's responding consciously rather than reacting blindly.
And this process doesn't mean destroying the ego, the constructed self. It gets a different job.
Exactly right. It's about integration, not annihilation. The famous psychologist Carl Jung called a similar process individuation. The authentic self doesn't reject the ego, it repositions it.
How so?
The ego stops being the fearful master, desperately trying to control everything and defend its image. Instead, it becomes the servant, a necessary and highly useful instrument through which awareness can navigate the world effectively. The personality becomes, ideally, transparent to the deeper self.
And the book notes that this shift, this repositioning, often doesn't happen when things are easy and comfortable.
Right.
It mentions the role of crisis.
Yes, that's a key observation. Often it's experiences of loss, failure, deep disillusionment, or hitting rock bottom that crack the shell of the constructed self.
Because the old story just doesn't work anymore.
Precisely. The narrative breaks down. It feels devastating at the time because the identity structure is collapsing. But that dismantling can be necessary. It requires real humility.
Humility in what sense?
The willingness to see things as they are without the ego's defenses. The willingness to admit the old story wasn't the whole truth. Perhaps it wasn't true at all in some ways. When those false structures crumble, the space is created for the authentic to be recognized in the quiet that follows.
And when this alignment starts to happen, when your thoughts, words, and actions start to flow from this deeper place, the book talks about integrity, but maybe in a broader sense. It mentions satya.
Right. Satya is often translated as truthfulness from Sanskrit, but here it points to something deeper than just not telling lies. It's about existential coherence.
Coherence.
Yeah, like an inner alignment. When your inner reality and your outer expression match, integrity isn't something you have to strive for. It becomes effortless. There's no internal conflict, no wasted energy maintaining facades. You move through the world as a unified field, so to speak.
Unified.
Yeah.
Coherent. Okay. And then towards the end, the book offers this really profound glimpse, touching on the idea of the authentic self being non-local. That sounds very technical. What does non-locality mean here?
It's a concept borrowed from physics, but applied existentially. The constructed self feels very localized. I am trapped inside this body, limited to this specific point in space and time.
That's our normal experience, right?
It's the default experience tied to the constructed self, yes. But the realization of the authentic self begins to dissolve that boundary. Awareness reviews itself as not being contained by the body or fixed in location. It's boundless, unconditioned, non-local.
So not confined.
Not confined. You start to glimpse that you are not just a small object within the vast universe. In a sense, you are the boundless awareness in which the universe appears.
That leads to that incredible line, something like, I am not merely in the universe, I am the universe aware of itself.
Exactly. That's the flavor of it. It's a radical shift in perspective that dissolves the feeling of fundamental separation between subject and object, between self and other, between you and the cosmos. It's the ultimate integration.
Wow. Okay. So let's try and bring this together. We've explored these two facets, the constructed self, the story, the necessary tool, but also potentially a prison if we over-identify with it.
Right. The tool.
And the authentic self, the underlying truth, the unchanging observer, the boundless awareness. And the goal isn't necessarily to destroy the tool, but to realize you are the awareness using it.
It's about profound participation in life, using the tool of personality and mind, but without the entanglement of believing that tool is all you are.
Participation without entanglement. I like that.
And the realization of this authentic self, the book suggests, marks the true beginning of freedom. Because that lifelong, often unconscious search for meaning, for validation, for finding yourself, it doesn't end in finding a better story or achieving some final state.
It ends how?
It ends in realization. The very self that was doing the searching dissolves into the authenticity, the awareness that was already present all along, silent, luminous, and free.
That leaves us, and you listening, with a really powerful place for reflection, a question implied by the text. What actually happens if you stop trying to define yourself, even just for 5 minutes? If you consciously drop all the labels, all the judgments, all the stories, and just observe what happens then? Think about that. What if I do not define myself at all? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.